Bridget Jones, am absolutely loving my new life.
After the first and second film, we always thought that there would be another chapter for Bridget.
Helen Fielding wrote a series of columns, and the columns were about Bridget in a complex situation.
I'm going to have a baby.
I think she's an every woman. You know, she's authentic and she's flawed. And I think it's made her a really beloved character.
Dr. Rawlings, I wonder if you could maybe do me a little favour.
I did quite a lot of work as a writer at first, because I'm very fond of the story and I love the actors involved. And I was really pleased, actually, because it was the first time I'd really set my hand to writing romantic comedy.
Oh no, Bridget. Who's the father?
We didn't want to fall into the trap of making a film with a great title but with very little content, which is why this one took so long to make.
What Helen Fielding does very cleverly, what she did in the first one and what she did this one, is she manages to tap into some sort of zeitgeist about what's going on with women in a very human and very humorous way. And what she did in this one was to tap into the idea of motherhood in your 40s.
There are always more risks with a geriatric mother.
Geriatric? That's outrageous.
Indeed. It's a pretty fantastic storyline. The fact that Bridget's 43 when she gets pregnant is very different to her being 33.
I thought it was interesting trying to discover the same person at a different time in her life, a character that people related to 16 years ago, and would she possibly speak to people who've also moved on with this character. It was a fun thing to get to do.
Oh,
Bridget.
Mark!
To see Renee back again in this role, it's rather magical. It's rather like coming back to an old friend.
Back in the day, we met and considered a lot of possible Bridgets, and it wasn't until we met Renee that Bridget all of a sudden snapped into life.
The minute she puts the coat back on of being Bridget, which is the look and the accent and the mannerisms, it's just impossible to envisage anyone else who could play this character.
It's strange to watch her go into the makeup truck as Renee and come out as Bridget. Gave me quite a shock on the first film, The Rat Party, where suddenly there was this slim Texan appeared.
She talks like Bridget, you know, while she's on the set all the time. She sounds English, and it's very, very confusing at times to talk to Renee about anything from her own life, because she grew up in Texas. And when she starts talking about life in Texas with an accent as if she comes from Surrey, it's very hard to process.
I'd ask you to join me, but I'm pretty sure you're not a big Gangnam Style kind of guy.
I was only there very briefly.
Where?
Gangnam.
The reasons why I was so excited to go back and revisit this experience was the reunion with everyone. I missed them when I read the script, and I miss them when I see their work. And I couldn't wait to get back and spend a little time and catch up and see how everybody's doing, and it's a wonderful time.
It's a great privilege to work with Renee, and I know that sounds really creepy, and it is a tiny bit creepy. Hi, Renee.
She's just a delightful person, and bright and brilliant, and better at being Bridget than I can imagine anyone being, because she's got the capacity to act that slightly scatty thing, which she isn't at all, actually, in herself.
But most of these things that she does are based on somebody we know's life. So it might be Helen's or mine or Renee's. All of that discussion about how you screw up in public, that's something that we talk about a lot, and we try and make it as authentic as we can.
I've been dazzled. Sometimes I'm itching to tell her that what I just saw I thought was genius. I thought it was masterful. It blows my mind. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this has been worth coming back just to see her do all that.
Renee is Bridget Jones. She plays it in a very sympathetic way, because I think that kindness oozes out of her. She's definitely the right person for it, and it couldn't have happened without her this time.
How do you orchestrate such cliffhangers in your life?
It's 10 years down the line since we've seen Bridget last.
So hot, so many candles.
She's obviously older and probably a little wiser for her experiences.
Let's have a look at you. Oh.
The only way I could contemplate a third was after I've aged a bit and actually tell a story about people at a completely different time of life.
We're not pretending that our character stays the same age. You know, our character is growing up, and we're following the story of her growing up. And it means that the actors can all play these roles as they are, and the issues that they're having in the story reflect the issues that they're probably having in their real lives.
I'm beginning to think I've passed my sexual sell-by date.
No, there are names for women like you now, Bridge. You're a cougar. You are a MILF.
I'm not a MILF. I'm not even a mum. I'm a spinster. I'm a spilf.
Everybody felt that they wanted to go back to the very first one. You know, just the feel of that. Just, you know, capturing the essence of Bridget again, but today.
It was scripted that she was slimmer, she was more successful, she's in a higher wage bracket. So it was a matter of just mixing up high street and some designer pieces, and Rennie and I decided that she would look through the glossy monthly women's magazines and try and recreate the look that she saw on the pages, but sort of doesn't quite get it right, but still looks adorable, but, you know, slightly off-kilter still. One of the outfits that we first tried on, which is what you see her in, the first time you see her in the office, which is a black corduroy skirt, which is a little bit longer than what we're used to on Bridget. And I tried to make her look a bit more put together at the beginning, and then she unravels a bit as the film goes on.
It's Renee that makes the character Bridget. It's the way she walks and the way she moves her head. So of course I liked the idea of incorporating a little bit of Renee in it, because then she knew how she could make that Bridget. Sort of the soft looks, the soft little ponytail. It's still trying to make it a little bit modern. The whole story was about moving on and about how they changed. Very much wanted to make them look great, but embrace, you know, the time difference.
Buongiorno, Miss Bridget.
Yeah, still got it.
I can take it from here. From here. Okay. I got this.
There are two men in Bridget's life, once again.
Bridget, I'm not going to pretend this isn't a shock.
I'm afraid you're going to have to excuse me.
Mr. Darcy makes an appearance, and her new friend, Jack Quant. He's a little more adventurous than maybe Mark Darcy. He's probably the polar opposite of Mark Darcy in many respects, and a new prospect for our Bridget.
It fits. I'm like the new kid on the block because they've had all this experience together. It brings new energy and a new dynamic to the film. It's all new to you, isn't it, lamb chop?
Mark seems to be doing what he's always done, which is solve human rights issues. He's clearly a brilliant lawyer and a very successful one.
Power to the punani!
But I think he's on the verge of being a bit jaded with it.
This is Camilla.
Hello.
He's definitely romantically disappointed. We find him at the end of a marriage which has not worked, and he clearly hasn't forgotten Bridget.
Mr. Darcy.
That's exactly why I didn't wear my heels.
The big job has been to make a great new leading man for Bridget who matches Colin and balances Colin Firth's character, because he has such sort of gravitas as Darcy and such comic presence. So that's been really interesting and great fun. And of course, Patrick Dempsey, who's now playing the other man, is Mr. Gorgeous on every level.
We really wanted to find an all-American male for this one. And we chose Patrick Dempsey, and thankfully he chose us, because he does seem to encompass that sort of all-American maleness, but with a sort of tongue-in-cheek humour.
Jack is the quintessential American, and Darcy's the quintessential English, right? And in that is two opposing ideas and philosophies that challenge each one, and both are valid and both are important, and I think they come to learn that over time.
Why the decision to have no family?
No children.
And no children?
Look, I love kids, but I've always found the idea of being a father myself kind of petrifying, which is why I've been drawn to algorithms.
Cue Hitler cats!
Jack Quant is completely not anyone else who's already been in the film. He's not Daniel Cleaver. He's a totally new, totally original character.
Well, hey, how about seeing you here?
I think that brings something exciting to the film that audiences haven't experienced in the first two movies.
Jack went through several incarnations until we ended up with the Jack Quant that we have now.
In following the patterns of the previous films, it would be all too easy that it's a choice between a good guy and a bad guy disguised as a good guy. That's not really doing that here. Because Jack actually, whatever we think about either of these guys, he's actually a pretty lovely guy. You know, we may not like algorithms for love, and we may not like the way he goes about what he does, but he's charming.
The most important thing is the baby.
Patrick Patrick's great. It must have been a bit weird coming into the third film because we all worked together before, but he was definitely part of the family at the end.
Working with Colin, Renee, and Emma Thompson, I mean, they've all won Academy Awards, which is remarkable. And yeah, I was very nervous coming in, but they have such grace and openness and creativity amongst them. It's really fun to be around that and to learn from them and to be inspired by them.
Colin and Patrick had this bromance immediately. Patrick had just come over from one of his races that he does with his race car team, and they hit it off immediately, talking about all of that. It's really sweet, actually. They were fast friends.
Working with Colin has been really inspiring. It's been a lot of fun. I enjoy him immensely. He's just really funny, you know, incredibly funny. That's the thing, and dry. His sense of humor is dry and articulate, and the way he loves to play with the words, you know, it's nice to see his perspective and how he articulates that. You know, I like that very much.
Yes, I can see that.
Wow, okay, you need to chill out.
I would leave me for him. But it's not a charm battle. It's not about who's the sexiest. It's not about who can play the tricks to win her. It's about whether this old love, which has proved time and time again to be troublesome, to be prohibitively difficult to having any sort of relationship, is going to win over something that promises something completely new.
Are you in love with him?
I have been. On paper, it's an absolute disaster, and it just shouldn't happen. But how do you qualify love? They just love each other.
Despite the time that's passed, despite the knowledge of each other and each other's shortcomings and foibles and all the things that the disappointments that they've experienced in each other, they're still somehow longing for each other.
Mark Darcy is obviously based on Pride and Prejudice as Mr. Darcy, so Jack Quant never really had a chance. Trying to steal Mark Darcy's perch, I mean, forget it. Walk away.
Dear Diary, I, Bridget Jones, am a singleton no more. Married? Yes. Smug? Well, it's about time, so maybe just a little.
To make films like this that are very culturally specific, English stories set in an English city, it's great.
By now, I thought I would have had a little baby to love with the chiseled jawed love of my life.
Any excuse to come film in London is a good one. I have so many friends there now, and I know my little spots and favorite neighborhoods and favorite little cafes. Bridget does live in the same flat, but she might have gotten a promotion and she might have made a little more money, so it might be a little more grown up.
We thought it would be good for her to stay living in the same flat in Borough Market, which, when the first film was made, was really just a market.
It costs £8 to buy a tomato in Borough now, but Bridget can just about afford to live there.
To actually walk into that world and see it alive in front of you is amazing.
Action, bye.
I've been living in LA for a few years, and so when I came back home to live in London in 2014, things had changed so much. And then I started work on this film. And so it was vital for me to try and bring in all of that, how architecture had changed, how London was much more cosmopolitan.
It's interesting watching this film and then watching the first one, because, you know, in the last 15 years, the city has grown exponentially, like where she lives in Borough. The good bit is they've built this beautiful building called the Shard, which is a major skyscraper. The bad bit is they've built a train line right by her flat. The trains literally rattle in two directions past her windows.
We thought that felt exactly like Bridget's character, that just as she gets her foot on the property ladder, they build a train line right by her bedroom window.
She is on the property ladder in London, which is nearly impossible for anybody to achieve, so good on her. But it's still familiar, and I'm glad that that was a decision that they'd made, because I think part of what is so appealing about revisiting the Bridget Jones experience is revisiting her world and her friends and her family and that familiarity, and it is all there.
When I came home from LA, I'd never seen so many people with ironic beards in my life, smoking groovy foreign cigarettes. And everybody was riding a bicycle, and that was the London I came home to. It wasn't the London I left.
The most interesting design opportunity for us was the passage of time. Not only had Bridget changed, but also the city she lived in has changed. And both Sharon, the director, and myself thought that was a really interesting approach to somehow reflect this changed London that is now full of skyscrapers that never existed sort of 15 years ago.
That's the joy of London. It's kind of complicated and confused and gorgeous and very romantic. And hopefully we've been able to portray some of that, as well as the beauty of the contemporary architecture and the period architecture, and wound all of that in with her story, her friends' stories, and the comedy of the moment.
The best directors over time have proved that it helps to work as a bit of a family.
Sharon Maguire, our director, is the original Shaz.
I know she inspired the character of Shazzer, but I always felt like she shares Bridget Jones, the character's sensibilities. I think she is Bridget Jones in many ways. And when she's laughing at the monitor at whatever it is that I'm doing out there, that's when Bridget Jones comes to life.
She's wild and mad and crazy and understanding, and she did the first one, so she really understands the journey that Bridget has been on.
I was really surprised when the script plopped into my inbox, because I thought, well, they were going to make it, they weren't going to make it. It was difficult getting all the actors together at the right time. And so I thought, oh, they're quite serious then. So it was a bit scary reading it, because I thought, I don't know if I want to go back 15 years in my own life and remember. But I was intrigued to see what had happened to all those characters. And then when I read it, I was very excited by it.
Cut there.
When the opportunity arose to work with Sharon again on this film, we leapt at the chance. She's so good with the actors and so understands the scenarios that the actors are having to play out. She was a friend of Helen Fielding's back in the 90s. So she understands this world and these characters better than most people. And I don't think there's actually anybody better to have made this film.
Come on, it's not a funeral. Can I get a couple of smiles out of you two, please? Maybe give her a little kiss, on the forehead there.
With all the prevaricating about whether we are going to do this third film or not, one thing that sealed the deal for me was when Eric Fellner said, I'm going to say your name to you and tell me what you think. And when I realized it was Sharon, I just thought, I'm in.
Oh, this is really happening. I just don't want to be more than in the hospital. Do you know what I mean?
Renee is a Texan and I'm a woman from the industrial Midlands. We wouldn't have that much in common, but we do have this character in common and we both feel an incredible integrity to trying to get it right. And so we talk about how to both make her sympathetic and how to service the humour, and she talks about an American perspective and I talk about a British perspective, and somehow we bring it all together.
Are you ready for this? Are you ready for this? Then ride, you sexy bitches! Ride!
She's fun, she's funny, she works really, really hard, and she wants this to be so good, and you can feel that. You sense it when she comes to work. We have a shorthand that I enjoy very much.
She'll say, what do you think this needs? And I'll go, so it needs, and she'll go, oh no, exactly what you mean, without necessarily having to talk, which is really good because you spend a lot of time talking, directing film.
She's a good friend, and we share the same sense of humor, so it's just, it's a joy. I mean, what a blessing.